Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Party Goat event in which the Piper is added to the game. So let's get into that. As far as his trait stone, they are 300 glory each as he is a rare, so you get 2 copies each as well. And it ends up giving a arcane trait stone. This would be used earlier on in the game for a Herdmaster, which is really good for cleansing. As well as later on in the game, you would use it for a Divine Ishbala, of course, as that is very, very powerful with how many Divine teams are capable to be used. So either of those two would be really good to go put it in. As far as the troop itself, it is relatively bad for the most part. It's basically a true damage alternative. You would mainly only use it earlier on in the game. Later in the game, it has literally no purpose whatsoever. But it deals true damage to an enemy and then steals 3 armor from it, and then converts it to magic. So basically, if it has armor, they'll steal that little bit of armor, and then you'll just get that little bit of magic from it. If it doesn't have any armor at all, if it has 0, for instance, you would gain no additional benefit from it. So not really that much. It's kind of like a Miststalker, or targetable Miststalker in a way. In some instances better, in some instances weaker, and that's pretty much the team in a nutshell. As far as its traits, this is immune to silence, which I guess is one nice trade-off. Has 20% dodge, and it has arcane. So for the most part, not really that relevant, just a pretty much dead content rare, other than very, very occasionally earlier on in the game, which you might be able to incorporate into some version of a true damage team, and we'll have one for him a little bit later on for mid-range. Other than that, let's get into everything else. So, the event objectives. We have ourselves 10% to all Pan's Vale, as well as 10% to all Wild Folk. This is relatively relevant, as most of the kingdom is Wild Folk. It's also relevant as the hero class from the kingdom does have a 20% bonus, the Bard, because it does count as both of those two things. The class event for it is also later this week, so pretty nice to be using this week due to all of the bonuses that it has. You'll also end up getting a extra trait stone whenever you use the Piper in PvP. You'd mainly only want to do this on 1 trophies though in casual PvP by constantly repicking, as there isn't really going to be much that you'd really be able to use it on effectively as far as real battles are concerned. And other than that, we have to go do a bunch of treasure maps today, or this week. So as far as doing treasure maps, of course, all you have to do is go under games and just click on treasure hunt. And as long as you have a map, you'll be brought into a little mini game and then just go through the map real quick, pretty much just rushing through it as quickly as possible and go from there. As far as the other one, you just go to PvP to get all your trait stones. Casual PvP, find either a easy 1 trophy, keep repicking, or go onto fire bombs whenever you see them. And for that, you can basically just do any team at all that has a Piper on it. Doesn't really matter too much. This is one of them that you could use, a Sunbird Piper fire bomb with your hero using War and Peace. War and Peace you get for free from completing out the KZL Kingdom all the way up north. So a really quick item to end up attaining. Actually one of the better early game weapons. It's also the quickest possible full AoE weapon that you can get as a newer player. So it comes in handy for that. But similar to pretty much any firebomb team, you essentially just let it hit itself out constantly. Just end your turn as quickly as possible. Let him do his thing. And that is that. Don't even need a castle on him a single time. Doesn't even matter really what we're using as long as we have the Piper. And as long as we do have that Piper, we will be getting ourselves 2 times trait stones. Unfortunately, useless trait stone, but twice the amount nonetheless. For the most part, not really much of a need to go and do this. You'd probably just be better off just spam exploring for the most part. Though you would end up getting ingots while doing this, so... unfortunately, it's not twice the ingots, but yeah, you would be getting ingots while this. But for the most part, not really much of a need to go and farm these down by that method. As far as other things that we have this week, if we go under event keys, are they worth using this week? Kind of. I would say for the most part, no, but there are a few noteworthy drops. It is, of course, a Pan's Vale week this week. So everything that is currently available, if you just click Pan's Vale and then click Show All, if you don't already own everything, is right here. It'll be all the ultra rares and higher. So basically, Blade Dancer, pretty much useless. Bunny Nog, pretty much useless. Capricious is not, even though he's a higher rarity because he's the raid one. Elowin, useless. Faunessa, pretty much useless. It just deals basically their damage to themselves and gains a little bit of HP. King Silenus, literally the only drop you would want from this kingdom. It's really good for raids this week, and it's also a good mid-range burner. Though once you have Infernus, you almost never use this troop again. But it deals damage to an enemy boosted by all wild folk on the team, including himself, at a pretty nice boost ratio. And then it does half damage to adjacent, and it burns all enemies. The burning all enemies part generally being what he's used for. The other part that he's generally used for is the fact that he has a half mana start. He also has Impervious, which occasionally can make him a pretty good last slot as well against like Krakens and other things that might have a lot of stats effects. But overall, kind of average, but still there's some really niche teams, particularly Mass Wild Folk and some burning teams like with Elam Grim that do actually occasionally use a King Solanus. But that's about the only thing that's really relevant in this kingdom. Then there's Nax, then there's Nyx as well. Nyx is also actually somewhat relevant, though you only really need one copy of it. It's mainly just used for a bunch of blues that it ends up creating. Other things that would be obtainable is the Satire Magician. It's mainly just a double silence. Siren is not obtainable, though relevant. She's actually a really quick mana generation, though she is not in the event key drop table. Savasi is, Silent One is, and Wild Queen is. Wild Queen's actually the mythic from this kingdom. Not really too relevant, though. She has a attack steal and then adds it to first slot. It's a really interesting concept, and then it creates a mixture of green to skull. Biggest issue, or not green to skull, greens and skulls. Biggest issue with this is generally this mix of the two of them tends to miss. I feel like every single time I use this thing, it always misses. But, I don't know, I just haven't really found anything too over the top for it. Compared to just using Keeper of Souls or any kind of the standard skull spam teams, she doesn't really fit into them that well. So you normally just use all the other ones instead, or just Doom Skull spam instead of her. So there isn't really much of a need to go for. But basically, bottom line, King Solanus is the only thing in the event queue drop table. Is it really worth it? Probably not. So, other than that, let's go into the raids themselves. Of course, I was just talking about the King Solanus. This is where he's actually pretty good, as you do have to use Pan's Veil and only Pan's Veil, as well as your hero in this, so you'd probably be wanting to set your thing to Bard as well, just to go all in, might as well. Other than that, of course, all the rewards and everything are the same. The ingots are still here as well. I actually ended up getting really, really lucky earlier and ended up getting a Wild Queen too, which was pretty funny. But, yeah, it still has all that drop table like I mentioned earlier. Actually, literally everything that we just went over there is actually in all these drop tables where it says Kingdom Troops. Literally everything I just showed is what it actually drops as possible Kingdom Troops. But let's go into a fight real quick. This is what I'll be using for most of the week, probably all the entire week. It is Mang, and I finally got it to +5 with those little things. The Copernicus, which of course is the raid one that came in through the gems right there. King Solanus, which I highly, highly advise having for this. It is actually in the soulforge too this week, so if you didn't happen to get it from keys, you may, if you will have like an excess amount of diamonds, and if you don't have it yet, want to pick it up in soulforge. But for the most part, I'd probably say doing invent keys, or hopefully getting lucky off it just from doing the packs would probably be a bit better. But it is very, very useful in this. It starts all troops off with, of course, half mana, assuming you have it fully traded, so that would get your hero to half if it wasn't already. The Copernicus itself, and if you're using something other than Siren in last slot, that as well. But anyways, we'll be running with this. Basically, the whole premise of this is we're going to throw Siren immediately, as you normally would with a Siren, and try to get a mana that we need. So basically, we'd want to hit on something that uses red or brown, ideally. So we'll hit on him. We're either going to get red or blue. Before we do, let's go grab those browns. Never mind, we already got Mang. Scratch that plan. Throw Mang at him immediately. He'll hit us back a little. That's fine. We already got our Mang going. Now we'll go, and I guess a yellow would be best at this point. So we'll go try for, I think, this one. So we either get yellow or we end up getting the hit on the boss. So we'll take this, grab the last thing we need for a hit. This thing does steal 4 attack and then converts it to magic, which is kind of cool. It's the first one of the raid troops, if I'm not mistaken, that you have the capability of keep getting bigger over time, which is definitely useful. Well, let's go get that. He, of course, gets 4 more magic from that. They're almost always going to have attack left over, so you're pretty much always going to be gaining that 4 magic. Unlike that other one that came in for Glory, where he normally won't be gaining it, because if they have no armor, you wouldn't get it. Whereas it's pretty easy to make sure they always have attack, as long as you don't have a attack reducer on your team. There isn't really much that's going to bring down their attack, unless they get like entangled or something from their self, or some kind of ability that you may have. But that's pretty much what I'll be running for raids. Pretty straightforward for the most part. Basically, just get the Siren down immediately. That will give a bunch of mana. Throw Mang down on boss like you would always do. Throw the raid troop on it as quickly as possible, as you always would. And King Solanus is basically just 40 pick off there. Is also, of course, 40 half mana start. So, of course, focus Valraven. This team could also get pretty easy Valraven kills, since you do have the Siren into a King Solanus. One of the biggest issues normally on raid days is actually being able to kill the Valraven. But with this combination, it's normally pretty straightforward. So we'll take a skull here. We're going to do that because I don't want to get in the way of the Mang, just in case we do want to go utilize that. So we'll do that. Get a double kill there. We actually have that laying there, so we'll go grab it so he doesn't. Want to make sure, of course, he doesn't get full mana. And we just throw a poke, and then another poke. And of course, with Mang, pretty much every single skull you ever take will be one shot once you actually get it off. assuming you get it on the raid boss. If I'm not mistaken, this red raid boss does have a relatively low armor, though, compared to some of the other ones. Though his effect is ridiculously weak. All it does is gain a little bit of attack. It doesn't have anything really annoying like barrier, submerge, free, or, you know, anything weird on it that's going to be super annoying. All it is just a attack thing, so it's basically never really even going to utilize this in most situations. So relatively straightforward to have to deal with. So, Soulforge, mentioned it a few times already. There's actually several things that are worth going for in it this week. As I mentioned, King Salinas is here. I'd personally say if you are going to bother going for King Salinas, it's probably better trying to at least a small attempt on the event keys first. It's not the greatest week to throw event keys, but yeah, King Salinas is like the one thing you would kind of want to probably try to get from it, as it is just very useful this week, given the bonuses and given the raids. But other than that, there are 2, or kind of technically 3, noteworthy things to kind of craft this week. Gorgoltha, Famine, and Dragon Soul. Generally, again, not the greatest to be actually crafting out legendaries, but there are a few of them that are particularly noteworthy. And in the case of Gorgoltha and Dragon Souls, those are excessively noteworthy legends to end up having, particularly Dragon Soul. Main thing with Dragon Soul, if you are a newer player and you have 800 diamonds, get this thing immediately. It is very ridiculously overpowered in early game, as well as decent in mid game. It deals 8 damage to all enemies, boosted by all dragons on the team, including itself at a 3 boost ratio. So basically, by default, it'll be doing 11 damage to all enemies, because it's gaining 3 from itself. And if you're using a full team of dragons, and you using your hero as a dragon guard, also counts for that, it would do 20 damage to all enemies. And 20 damage at a lower level range is almost 1 shot. Definitely 2 shots, and possibly 3, but you know, that's a lot of damage. It's ridiculously high damage relative to anything else that you can use at that level range. The only thing that is magic at your skills is its amount of explosions, so earlier on in the game you would have a relatively low explosion, so it's still pretty decent. I think you have like 6 or 7 or so, depends on your magic and such, but still, the amount of damage is always static, it's always the same, and the second you get to pick up a Dragon Soul, even with 0 traits, you can do up to 20 damage to all enemies, which is very, very high, 80 total, so definitely really good to have. Not only that, it's also great for souls. It gains 15 souls per cast. It's also really good for the new quest system. I don't think I've really shown it much in videos, but of course I do them in streams and such. But on any of those tasks where it tells you, let's see if I actually have one, where it tells you to go do, here, we actually do, like this right here. It says win battles using 3 unique constructs in your team, and then you end up getting 10 gems. You have to do that 15 times. If you go do that with a Dragon Soul in first slot with 3 troops behind it, being those 3 that it tells you to use, and then you go do that to an easy challenge, like let's say first challenge Divinity Fields, you can kill that out within seconds and then just keep repeating that over and over and over again. And that's pretty much it. Really, really good. Dragon Soul is great for that. You end up gaining some passive souls while doing it, and you get to get the daily tasks done. But yeah, highly, 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 highly advised. If you don't have a Dragon Soul and you can afford it, to definitely pick one up. Other than that, Gorgoltha is pretty relevant. Gorgoltha is the best frontline tank in the entire game, and almost every single team in existence can run Gorgoltha in first slot and it will still function. The main reason for this is it just accumulates so much mana because it's a good exploder. It's 15 mana cost for basically clearing out the entire board with Explode, essentially. It also cleanses itself each cast, so if it ends up getting entangled, frozen, or anything like that, you can easily get it off. The most relevant part about it, though, not just being the mana generation aspect, but it has a 75% skull reduction, which is the second highest in the entire game, and it's the highest that is realistically usable. The actual highest is on a troop that generally blocks too much mana, the Stonehammer, if you put it in first slot. So Gorgoltha tends to always be used instead of it in almost every situation, just because it's versatile and can be used with literally anything. So yes, very, very nice troop to have as well. And other than that, technically another pickup that could be okay is a Famine. Famine, while not the best of mythics, I would say is about the 6th best mythic, somewhere around there. Not sure exactly as far as rankings, but most noteworthy thing about him is he's the best mana drain in the entire game. So if you're ever up against things that have really high mana cost, like 15 plus, like the entire enemy team you're up against is like legends or mythics, it's a pretty good counter against those. One other thing that's pretty good for is, let's say, any team that's going to be starting entirely with half mana, and you can get this thing going before they get casted. You'll be able to go and actually use basically their mana that they have and use it against them if you can get this really quickly up with like a Mercy or anything else that can feed it mana. But it's an okay thing to have. Generally, you don't use it too much when invading, though it's insanely good on defend, particularly if you want to set it on one of your Guild War days. But it is worth considering. Not the absolute greatest of mythics, but one of them within the range of possible crafting priority. But anyways, other than that, I believe that is everything, and let's go into the PvP now. So, I mainly just wanted to show one team. It's a mid-range true damage team using the new Piper. Keep in mind, this Piper is useless, but I did want to show a team for it. It is Corvash, Miralith, Azura, and Piper. And you can end up trying to put your hero into this if you so chose. I guess technically trying to replace out the Corvash and putting your hero there would probably work out best, as Corvash is the hardest to obtain thing from this team. So probably just putting that with a brown weapon in first slot and kind of just tanking out with that could end up working. But basically the premise that we're going to be going for here is rush up the Azura as quickly as possible, get our explosions. If you don't already have Azura, you get one for free from completing out the Merlantis Kingdom. So a really easy thing to obtain. Go and get that down. And if you don't have Miralith, you could be that could be the one that you end up replacing out with your hero there. But let's get as much mana as we can. Somehow did not get Azura to full mana there. Definitely would have been useful if we did. But we'll go and just take a green. We'll take it this way so we don't give anything. Throw a Miralith down, which will get us pretty much all of our full mana that we need. It destroys a lot of gems. It has a static 6 true damage to all enemies, as well as a static 6 attacking, which is kind of nice. So I'll throw that down. We can keep stacking that over and over and over again normally. But basically, we'll get our Azura down, keep poking him here and there. Bad thing about this, of course, is if they don't have any armor left, we will not be able to go and do its thing. But we'll go and do our explosion, try to get a Corvash down before he gets to do anything. Hopefully he doesn't do something weird, like kill our Corvash, would not be good. But we'll get that down, probably clean up with something here. He's about to queen map kill that. I don't think there's a single thing we could really do to stop that, because we're not going to have enough damage quick enough. Though we could try looping, let's see. Come on, you got this. Nope, gonna get the kill there. Not much we could do about that. Let's clean out the... Actually, I might not even clean out the first slot. We'll go and get rid of one of these. We will gain our 3 magic since it does still have armor. As you see, we do end up gaining that 3 magic gain. It's kind of like a, like I mentioned, a Miststalker in that way. Instead of gaining every single kill, you get it based on if they still have armor left, which is generally going to be more often. One big issue that Miststalker normally has is it's not normally gaining that benefit. But we'll go for this, go for another little true damage poke. We do keep getting stronger and stronger as he keeps going. So that's one nice kind of benefit from him. But for the most part, as you can see, not really the greatest. We actually could even still lose here. It's funny, we're playing basically a battle of just stat reductions here. He keeps lowering ours, and he keeps... it's just like a back and forth of us reducing each other. Okay, we did not reduce its magic, though, so I think it's actually going to get the kill. No! Wait, we got this, Piper, you got this. Boom, 3 HP, Piper. You got this. Yeah, Piper, is it worth using? No. That's kind of evident with its ability, but it's an okay kind of mid-range thing. And if you are going to be using it in PvP, definitely use it for the quicker battles on things like this. Just if you want to put it in here, go claim it with the fire bombs, get your quick trace stones, and kind of go from there, where you just take absolutely anything. I personally would not advise using it in any other circumstance, unless you're a really new player and you just want to build a new, or like a low-level true damage team out of that. Basically just search true under your troops thing and just find something that will cover every single color. Use like the yellow true damage weapon and kind of just go from there. Other than for purposes like this team and that's about all you're really going to be using this thing for. So again, not much as far as this new troop, but still, nonetheless, we can have quite a bit of fun with the hero class this week, since it does have quite a bit of a bonus. And as I mentioned, the class event is on Thursday. We're actually getting a moon on Wednesday. I think my thing was blocking it earlier. But yeah, we're getting a moon on Wednesday, and we're getting the class event for the Bard class on Thursday. Also, just to really briefly go over Bard, as it's a somewhat relevant class. I'd say about 5th best class, somewhere around there. What's quite noteworthy about this is mainly it's actually none of its perks for the most part. While it is helpful, main thing that's noteworthy about it is its trait. Actually, it ends up giving +1 to all stats to all yellows per turn. This is particularly good if you're using 3 to 4 yellows on your team, as that is a lot of stats per turn. It's the only hero class to have an ability like this, and there's currently only 3 troops that end up having this: Scorpius, Champion of Anu, and this hero class. Scorpius for brown, Champion of Anu for blue, and of course Bard for yellow. So it's one of those 3, and of course the other 3 colors will have it eventually as well. But still, it's pretty decent. Any troop that ever gets these, or any hero class that ever gets these, will always be really good, and Bard is one of those kind of troops. Other than that, it also is the only hero class in the entire game with immune to silence, which normally isn't that relevant, though if you are up against something that has silence spam, then you would end up being able to utilize that. Other than that, as far as its talent tree, normally put it to a random stats effect, give it 2 extra magic if in last position, pretty much the only one you'd ever use there. It's one of the few things in the entire game, or one of the few hero classes, no troop currently has it, but it's one of a few hero classes that actually has spell reduction, 20% specifically. Normally you would start with 50% mana. Main reason I have it actually set to +3 magic is if we're using King Salinas, we don't need to have this trait because King Salinas will do it for us, since this troop counts as both Pan's Veil and Wild Folk, which of course is giving it 20% extra stats this week as well. Other than that, you would either use the +4 magic if you're using an artifact and then the +1 magic to everything, or you would go for, or in the next tree, you would end up going for either the +1 purple or the enchant on green. Normally, it would kind of depend. If you're using it more on a Guild War day where you're using like a lot of yellows and it's kind of blocked, you'd probably use the enchant. But if you're just kind of using it in a standard team, as well as the raid team that I was doing, you'd more likely want to opt for the purple instead, as you wouldn't need to constantly keep getting Mang up. You wouldn't need it. You'd rather just put the purple into the troop that's going to be killing out the raid boss, since it does end up using that purple color. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions or anything you want me to go over, let me know, and I'll make sure to do so. Anyways, I hope you all enjoy the week, and have a wonderful week, everyone. Goodbye.